The sound of Vanessa's heels echoed through the sterile hospital corridors. Her heart was pounding so hard it felt like it was trying to escape her chest. As she ran, flashbacks of her tumultuous pregnancy flooded her mind. "Ma'am, please don't run," a nurse shouted, but Vanessa barely heard her. 4 months earlier, Vanessa had been sitting alone at the dinner table, Ethan's untouched plate in front of her. The clock on the wall read 10:30 p.m. She sighed, picking up her phone for the 10th time that night. "Ethan, where are you? I'm all alone and pregnant," she murmured to herself, typing the message. 3 dots appeared on the screen, followed by a quick reply. "Sorry, love. Last-minute meeting. Don't wait up for me." Silent tears ran down Vanessa's face. She gently caressed her still small belly and whispered, "At least you're here with me, right, baby?" Back in the present, Vanessa felt drained, both physically and emotionally. Benjamin had been born premature 23 days ago, and from the start, everything felt like an overwhelming challenge. He was so small, fragile, and delicate. The doctors always had concerned looks when they examined him, and their discussions left Vanessa anxious. With each new test came a new uncertainty. Benjamin's lungs weren't functioning as they should, and he relied on machines to breathe. The nurses were kind, but the atmosphere was always tense with worry. In the first few days, Vanessa couldn't hold her son. She would sit beside the incubator, staring at the tiny body connected to tubes and wires. Every breath Benjamin took seemed like a battle, and every time he opened his eyes, it was as if he was fighting to stay there, with her. Vanessa spent sleepless nights, her mind a whirlwind of fears. She wondered if she would ever get to take her son home. "You're strong, my love. Don't give up," she whispered, holding Benjamin's tiny hand, which almost disappeared between her fingers. Her voice, though shaky, was an attempt to give strength to her little boy. She felt helpless, but she couldn't let her son sense that. "Benjamin," she murmured, placing her hand on the glass as if she could touch him. A doctor approached, her face serious. "Mrs. Swift, can we talk for a moment?" Vanessa felt her world crumble. "What is it? My son? He's going to be okay, right?" The doctor hesitated. "Benjamin is very fragile. The next few days will be critical. We've done everything we can, but..." At that moment, Vanessa felt her legs give way. She leaned against the wall, struggling to breathe. "No, no, no. Please, God, don't take my baby from me." A nurse rushed over, helping Vanessa to sit down. "Take deep breaths, ma'am. Your son needs you to be strong right now." Vanessa nodded, trying to pull herself together. She looked again at the incubator, at the tiny being fighting for his life. "Where's Ethan?" she suddenly asked, realizing her husband's absence. The nurse exchanged a glance with the doctor. "We've tried to reach your husband, but..." Just then, Vanessa's phone buzzed. It was a message from Ethan. "I'm stuck in traffic. How's Benjamin?" Vanessa felt a wave of anger and frustration. Even now, while their son was fighting for his life, Ethan wasn't there. She tossed her phone into her bag, determined to face this moment alone, just as she had throughout the pregnancy. Can I go in to see him?" Vanessa asked, her voice trembling. The doctor nodded. "Of course, but only for a few minutes. Remember, any stimulation could be too much for him right now." Vanessa stood up, determined. As she prepared to enter the ICU, she made a silent promise to her son. "Mommy's here, Benjamin, and I'm going to fight for you with everything I've got." After 2 days, the silence in the hospital hallway was deafening. Vanessa sat on a cold bench, her gaze lost in the void. The doctor's words still echoed in her mind. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Swift. We did everything we could, but Benjamin didn't make it." A nurse gently approached, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Mrs. Swift, is there anything we can do for you?" Vanessa just shook her head, unable to form words. Her world had collapsed in a matter of hours. She stood up mechanically, gathering her things. "Are you sure you don't want us to call someone?" the nurse insisted. "No. He's always working." Vanessa muttered, her voice barely audible. The drive home was a blur. Vanessa didn't even remember how she got there. When she finally arrived, all she wanted was to crawl into bed and cry until there were no tears left. She opened the door quietly, dragging herself up the stairs. As she approached the bedroom, she heard muffled sounds. Her heart raced. "Ethan?" She called hesitantly. There was no response, but the sounds continued. With a trembling hand, Vanessa turned the doorknob. The scene before her was like a nightmare. Ethan was in their bed, tangled in the arms of another woman. They separated, startled by Vanessa's presence. "Vanessa!" Ethan stammered, pulling the sheet to cover himself. I can't explain." Something inside Vanessa snapped. With a primal scream of pain and rage, she lunged at Ethan, her nails digging into his face. "You monster!" she screamed, hitting him over and over. "Our son is dead! Dead! And you're here in our bed, with this woman." The other woman screamed, trying to get dressed hurriedly. Ethan grabbed Vanessa's wrists, trying to restrain her. "Vanessa, stop! You're out of control," he shouted, but it only enraged her more. "Out of control? Out of control?" she repeated hysterically. "Our baby died and you weren't there. I had to watch him go alone." Ethan managed to push Vanessa, and she fell to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. He quickly grabbed his phone. "I need an ambulance. My wife lost our child and is completely out of control. She's having a breakdown," Ethan said, his voice cold. "No," she screamed, trying to get up. "Don't you dare." But it was too late. Within minutes, paramedics stormed into the room. Vanessa fought, screamed, begged, but it was no use. She was sedated and taken to an ambulance. Days later, Vanessa woke up in a strange room, the walls white and sterile. A nurse entered, smiling gently. Where am I?" Vanessa asked, her voice hoarse. "You're at Sunnyvale Rest Clinic, dear," the nurse replied. "You're here to recover." The memories came flooding back like a storm. Benjamin, the betrayal, the fight. Vanessa felt the panic rising. No, I need to get out of here. My son's funeral." The nurse held her hand, her gaze full of pity. "I'm sorry, dear. The funeral was yesterday." Vanessa felt as if she'd been punched in the stomach. She hadn't even been able to say goodbye to her son. The tears started to fall, silent and unending. "Please," she whispered, "let me go." The nurse shook her head. "I'm sorry, but you need to stay here for a while. Doctor's orders." As the nurse left the room, Vanessa curled up in the bed, feeling more alone than ever. Her son was gone, her marriage was in ruins, and now she was trapped, unable even to grieve her loss in peace. The days at Sunnyvale Rest Clinic dragged on endlessly for Vanessa. At first, she obediently swallowed the pills they gave her, but soon realized they left her numb, unable to process her pain. With a cunning born of desperation, Vanessa began hiding the pills under her tongue, discreetly spitting them out when no one was looking. As the medicated fog lifted, reality hit her with full force. The nights were the hardest. Lying in her narrow bed, Vanessa would silently sob, hugging herself tightly. "Benjamin," she whispered to the empty room, "forgive me for not being there. Forgive me for failing you." During the day, memories of Ethan's betrayal haunted her. Every happy moment they had shared now felt like a cruel lie. Anger and sadness swirled inside her, leaving her exhausted and hollow. It was on an especially difficult afternoon that Vanessa met Dolores, a sharp-eyed woman in her 60s with a kind smile. Vanessa was sitting alone in the clinic's garden when Dolores approached. "Mind if I sit here, dear?" Dolores asked, pointing to the empty spot on the bench. Vanessa just shrugged, barely lifting her eyes. Dolores sat down, staying quiet for a few minutes before speaking again. "You know, I've been watching you for a few days," she said softly. "You're not taking the meds, are you?" Vanessa turned abruptly, fear evident in her eyes. "Please don't tell anyone," she begged. Dolores chuckled quietly. "Don't worry, your secret's safe with me. In fact, I think you're doing the right thing." Confused, Vanessa frowned. "What do you mean?" "Sometimes we need to feel our pain to get through it," Dolores explained. "Those pills, they just numb what we need to face." For the first time in weeks, Vanessa felt a connection with someone. Tears began to fall. "I lost my son," she confessed, her voice breaking. "And my husband?" "He." Dolores placed a comforting hand over Vanessa's. "I know, dear, and I'm so sorry for all of it, but you need to know something. You're stronger than you think." In the days that followed, Vanessa and Dolores met regularly. The older woman became a beacon of hope in the darkness surrounding Vanessa. "You need to fight for your freedom," Dolores insisted during one of their conversations. "Don't let them keep you here against your will." Vanessa shook her head, disheartened. "But how? Ethan has all the control. He put me here. Dolores interrupted her. "Ethan may have put you here, but he can't keep you here forever. There are laws, dear, and more importantly, you have strength within you." "I don't know if I do," Vanessa murmured. "Oh, but you do," Dolores smiled. You've survived the most terrible loss a mother can face. You're here, fighting every day. That's strength, Vanessa. Dolores' words planted a seed of hope in Vanessa's heart. Slowly, she began to rise from the fog of depression that had consumed her. One night, as the two were talking in Vanessa's room, Dolores whispered, "Remember, dear, sometimes we have to be the heroine of our own story. No one else can fight this battle for you." Vanessa nodded, feeling a determination she hadn't felt in weeks. "You're right, Dolores. I need to get out of here. I need to face Ethan and say goodbye to my Benjamin properly." Dolores smiled, her eyes shining with a mix of pride and sadness. "That's the spirit, my dear. The journey will be hard, but you're not alone. Remember that." That night, lying in bed, Vanessa began to plan. The pain was still there, deep and raw, but now there was something more. A purpose. She would fight. For Benjamin, for herself, and for the future she still had ahead of her. The night was cold when Vanessa finally escaped the clinic, her heart pounding frantically in her chest. Dolores' words echoed in her mind. "Be brave, dear. Your freedom is just ahead." Vanessa walked through the dark streets, her hesitant steps leading her back to the place she once called home. As she got closer, the sound of laughter and music filled her ears. Colorful lights danced through the windows of her old house. Standing on the sidewalk, Vanessa watched the scene with a mix of shock and disgust. Ethan was throwing a party? Just weeks after their son died. While she suffered in a clinic, denied even the chance to attend her own child's funeral, hot tears streamed down her face. Vanessa clenched her fists, anger threatening to consume her. But no, she wouldn't give Ethan the satisfaction of seeing her break down. With trembling steps, Vanessa walked away from the house, leaving the sounds of the party behind. She knew exactly where she needed to go now. Half an hour later, Vanessa stood in front of Brianna's door, her best friend. Hesitant, she rang the doorbell. The door opened, revealing Brianna's shocked face. "Vanessa? Oh my God, Vanessa!" Brianna pulled Vanessa into a tight hug, tears streaming down both of their faces. "We were so worried. How are you here?" "It's a long story," Vanessa whispered, her voice hoarse. "Can I come in?" Of course! Brianna pulled her inside. Peter, get over here now." Vanessa's brother appeared in the hallway, his eyes widening at the sight of her. "Nessa? Oh my God, what happened?" The next few hours were a whirlwind of emotions. Sitting in the living room, Vanessa poured everything out: Benjamin's death, Ethan's betrayal, and the forced internment. Brianna and Peter listened, horrified and furious. "That bastard! I always knew he was a piece of crap," Peter exploded, punching the couch cushion. How could he do this to you?" Vanessa sobbed, wrapped in Brianna's arms. I don't know what to do now. I can't go back to that clinic, but I have nowhere to go." Peter knelt in front of Vanessa, holding her hands. "You're staying here with us, okay? And we're going to fight Ethan. He's not getting away with this." "But how?" Vanessa asked, her voice heavy with despair. Peter smiled, a determined gleam in his eyes. "I'm a lawyer, remember? And I have a few contacts who can help us gather evidence against Ethan." Brianna nodded eagerly. "That's right, and I know a few people who work at Ethan's office. I bet we can get some dirt on the women he's been seeing." Vanessa looked at the two of them, a flicker of hope igniting in her chest. You do that for me?" "Of course," Brianna exclaimed, hugging her again. "You're family, Nessa. We're in this together." Peter stood up, grabbing his phone. "I'm going to make some calls right now. Don't worry. We're going to show Ethan he messed with the wrong person." That night, lying in the guest bed at Brianna's house, Vanessa felt a complex mix of emotions. The pain of losing Benjamin was still a raw wound, but now there was also a fire of determination burning inside her. "I'll make it, my love," she whispered to the ceiling, picturing her son's little face. "Mommy's going to be strong for both of us." And for the first time in weeks, Vanessa fell asleep with a glimpse of hope for the future. In the months that followed, Vanessa found an unexpected purpose amidst her pain. One night, while flipping through old photos of Benjamin in the incubator, an idea struck her. "Brianna," she called, her voice trembling with emotion. "Look at this. Benjamin's clothes. They were all so big for him." Brianna walked over, looking at the photos. "You're right. It must be hard to find clothes for premature babies." Vanessa's eyes sparkled with a newfound determination. What if we could change that? And that's how Little Angels was born, a clothing line specially designed for premature babies. Vanessa and Brianna spent sleepless nights sketching, sewing prototypes, and planning. "This is for you, Benjamin," Vanessa whispered as she worked, silent tears running down her face. As the company grew, the legal battle against Ethan intensified. Peter, tireless in his role as both lawyer and protector, spent countless hours gathering evidence and in the courtroom. "You bastard!" Ethan yelled after a particularly tense hearing. "You're ruining my life! And that's nothing compared to what you deserve and what I want to do to you." Peter shot back in anger. Peter stepped protectively in front of Vanessa. "You ruined your own life when you betrayed Nessa and had her committed unjustly." Vanessa touched Peter's arm, her voice calm but firm. "He's not worth it, Peter. He doesn't even deserve our anger." Weeks turned into months. Little Angels started gaining recognition, and Vanessa found solace in helping other families who were going through similar situations. One quiet afternoon in the company's office, Brianna found Vanessa crying silently over a letter. "Nessa, what's wrong?" Vanessa looked up, a trembling smile on her lips. "It's from a mother. She says that our clothes were the first to fit her baby perfectly. That she finally got to see her son as a baby, and not as a patient." Brianna hugged her friend tightly. "You're making a difference, Nessa. Benjamin would be proud." Meanwhile, in the courtroom, the battle was coming to a close. The judge banged the gavel, his voice echoing through the room. Considering all the evidence presented, this court grants the divorce and orders an equal division of all assets acquired during the marriage. Vanessa let out a shaky breath, feeling as if a massive weight had been lifted off her shoulders. Peter hugged her tightly, whispering, "It's over, Nessa. You did it." In the days that followed, Vanessa found herself spending more and more time with Peter. He was there to celebrate every win for Little Angels, to wipe away her tears on difficult nights, and to simply hold her hand in silence when words weren't enough. One evening, as they walked through the park after a long day of work, Peter suddenly stopped. "Nessa, I need to tell you something." Vanessa looked at him, curious. "What is it, Pete?" The silence of the park seemed to amplify the sound of Vanessa's heartbeat. She looked at Peter, his words still echoing in her ears. He stepped closer, taking her hands in his. "Vanessa," Peter began, his voice trembling with emotion. I need to tell you something I've kept inside for so long." She stared at him, her eyes reflecting the soft glow of the park's lights. "What is it, Pete?" Peter took a deep breath. "Do you remember that high school dance? When you wore that blue dress?" Vanessa nodded, confused. "Yes, but..." "That night," he continued, "I realized I was in love with you, and from that moment on the feeling never went away. I tried to ignore it, bury it, but..." He paused, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I've always loved you, Nessa. Always." Vanessa felt as if the world had stopped. Memories of their youth flooded her mind, moments with Peter now taking on a new meaning. "Pete, I don't know what to say." She whispered, her voice thick with emotion. He gently caressed her face. "You don't have to say anything. I needed you to know. After everything we've been through, after everything you faced, I couldn't keep it hidden anymore." Tears streamed down Vanessa's face. She threw herself into Peter's arms, burying her face in his chest. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" Peter held her tight. "I was scared. Scared of losing you, of losing our friendship. And then you met Ethan in college, and I thought it was better to stay away." Vanessa looked into his eyes. In that moment, she didn't just see the friend who had always protected her, but the man who had always been by her side through every moment. Without thinking, she rose up on her toes and kissed him. It was a gentle kiss, full of promises and possibilities. In the weeks that followed, Vanessa and Peter carefully navigated their new relationship. Every step was taken cautiously, both aware of the past and fearful of what the future might hold. One morning, while they were working together at the Little Angels office, Vanessa suddenly felt a wave of nausea. She rushed to the bathroom, leaving Peter worried. "Nessa, are you okay?" he called through the door. When she came out minutes later, her face was pale. "Pete, I think I need to see a doctor." Hours later, the couple sat in a clinic's waiting room, their hands intertwined, hearts racing. The doctor entered with a gentle smile. This is an ulcer as you thought, Vanessa. This ulcer has arms, legs, and a head. You're going to have a beautiful baby. You're pregnant. The world seemed to stop. Vanessa felt like she couldn't breathe. Memories of Benjamin flooded her mind, the pain of his loss mixing with a paralyzing fear. Pregnant? She whispered, her voice barely audible. Peter squeezed her hand, his own voice trembling. Nessa, we're going to have a baby. Vanessa turned to him, her eyes filled with tears. Pete, I'm so scared. What if it happens again? He pulled her close, holding her tightly. I'm here, Nessa. We'll get through this together, every step of the way. That night, lying in bed, Vanessa placed her hand over her still flat stomach. Fear and hope battled inside her. She closed her eyes, silent tears streaming down her face. Benjamin, she whispered into the dark room, your little brother or sister is on the way. Watch over us, my angel. Please, watch over us. The weeks dragged on for Vanessa, each day a mix of hope and terror. She often found herself touching her belly, whispering promises and prayers to the baby growing inside her. One particularly difficult morning, Vanessa woke up screaming, sweaty and trembling. Peter immediately pulled her into his arms. Shh, it's okay, Nessa. It was just a nightmare. She clung to him, sobbing. I dreamed we were at the hospital again, that the baby, that he... Look at me, Peter said softly, holding her face in his hands. This isn't like last time. We're in this together. I promise I won't leave your side for even a second. Vanessa nodded, trying to steady her breathing. I'm so scared, Pete. What if I'm not strong enough? You are the strongest person I know, he replied, kissing her forehead. And we'll both be strong for this baby. At the first prenatal appointment, Vanessa gripped Peter's hands so tightly that her fingers turned white. When the sound of the baby's heartbeat filled the room, she started to cry. Do you hear that, Nessa? Peter whispered, tears in his own eyes. That's our baby, strong and healthy. The doctor smiled gently. The heartbeat sounds perfect, Mrs. Thompson. Everything seems to be progressing normally. Vanessa let out a sob of relief. Are you sure? There's nothing wrong? The doctor placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. I understand your fear, given your history, but I promise we'll do everything in our power to ensure a healthy pregnancy. As the months passed, Peter became a constant and comforting presence. He was there at every appointment, asking questions, taking notes. At home, he massaged Vanessa's swollen feet and rushed to satisfy her strangest cravings. One night, as Peter read a parenting book, Vanessa watched him with a mix of love and fear. Pete, she called softly, what if I don't know how to be a mother? What if? He put the book down and pulled her close. Nessa, you are already a mother. Benjamin made you a mother, and you're going to be an amazing mother to this baby, too. Silent tears ran down Vanessa's face. Sometimes I feel like I'm betraying Benjamin, like I'm trying to replace him. Peter kissed the top of her head. You're not replacing anyone. Our love for this baby doesn't take away from the love we have for Benjamin. He will always be our first child. At 18 weeks of pregnancy, the same point when Benjamin was born prematurely, Vanessa was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. She barely slept, constantly checking to make sure she could still feel the baby move. Peter took her for a walk in the park, trying to distract her. Suddenly, Vanessa stopped, clutching her belly. Pete, she shouted, panic clear in her voice. He grabbed her shoulders, fear flashing across his face. What is it? The baby? Vanessa looked at him, her eyes wide. But then, slowly, a trembling smile formed on her lips. He kicked, she whispered. Strong, like he's telling me everything's okay. Peter placed his hand on her belly, feeling the movement. Tears of relief streamed down both their faces. See, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Our little warrior is telling us not to worry. In that moment, under the soft afternoon sun, Vanessa felt a wave of love and hope so powerful it nearly knocked her over. She looked at Peter, at her belly, and then up at the sky. Thank you, Benjamin, she whispered. Thank you for watching over your little brother. Thank you, God, for everything you've given me. And for the first time since learning she was pregnant, Vanessa allowed herself to truly believe that everything would be okay. The piercing cry echoed through the delivery room, and Vanessa felt her heart stop for a moment. It's a boy, announced the doctor, lifting the newborn baby. Peter, with tears in his eyes, cut the umbilical cord with trembling hands. Is he okay? he asked, his voice choked. The pediatrician quickly examined the baby. Perfectly healthy. Congratulations, you have a beautiful 7.7-pound baby boy. When they placed the baby in Vanessa's arms, she couldn't hold back her tears. Hello, my love, she whispered, gently stroking his red, swollen face. Welcome to the world. Peter leaned down, kissing Vanessa's forehead and gently touching their son's tiny hand. He's perfect, Nessa. Simply perfect. Vanessa looked at Peter, her eyes shining. Ben, she said softly. Ben Peter Thompson. What do you think? Peter swallowed hard, overcome with emotion. It's perfect, a strong name for our little warrior. In the days that followed, Vanessa found herself immersed in an exhausting but wonderful routine. Sleepless nights were balanced by Ben Peter's sleepy smiles, the quiet moments of breastfeeding, and the sweet baby scent that filled the house. One afternoon, while rocking Ben to sleep, Brianna came by for a visit. "How's my favorite nephew?" she whispered, stepping into the room. Vanessa smiled, tired but happy. "He just fell asleep. Want to hold him?" Brianna carefully took Ben into her arms, her eyes welling up with tears. "He's so beautiful, Nessa. You and Peter did a great job." The two friends sat down on the couch, Brianna still cradling Ben. "You know," Brianna began, "seeing you like this, it's like everything is finally in the right place." Vanessa nodded, tears forming in her own eyes. "Sometimes it feels like a dream, after everything we went through." "You deserve this, Nessa," Brianna said firmly. "All this happiness." At that moment, Peter walked in, carrying a stack of papers and a blue teddy bear in the other hand. "Hello, my favorite ladies," he smiled, leaning down to kiss Vanessa. "What's that?" Vanessa asked, pointing to the papers. Peter sat down, excitement gleaming in his eyes. "These are the latest numbers from Little Angels. Babe, our sales tripled in the last quarter." Vanessa's eyes widened. "Really? But how?" "That interview you gave," Brianna chimed in, "about your story, about Benjamin. It touched a lot of people. Moms are looking for the brand not just for the quality, but for the meaning behind it." Vanessa felt a wave of emotions wash over her. Joy for the success, gratitude for the life she had now, and a pang of sadness as she thought of Benjamin. Peter, noticing her expression, knelt in front of her. "Hey, are you okay?" She nodded, smiling through her tears. "Yes, it's just that sometimes it feels too good to be true. I'm afraid I'll wake up and find out it's all a dream." Peter took her hands, kissing them gently. "It's not a dream, my love. It's real. You built this. Your strength, your courage, you deserve every moment of happiness." Brianna leaned closer, still holding Ben. "He's right, Nessa. Look around you. This is your family, the family you built." Vanessa looked at Ben Peter's sleeping face, at Peter's loving smile, at Brianna's kind eyes. In that moment, she felt a peace she had never known before. "My family," she whispered, stroking Ben's cheek. Then, looking up as if she could see beyond the ceiling, she added quietly, "All of you, including you, my little angel, Benjamin." And there, surrounded by the love of her family, Vanessa finally allowed herself to fully embrace the happiness she so deeply deserved. The end. The strength of a mother is always extraordinary. Vanessa got her happily ever after, and her pain helped her grow and realize that love had been by her side all along.
I can feel it.